Hello, my name is Emily, and the night my dad called me dead weight in front of the whole family was the night I stopped trying to be his daughter and finally started becoming my own person. It was supposed to be a celebration, a big family dinner, stuffed into my parents' house with all the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, the kind of gathering where everyone pretends we're close, where we laugh too loud and hug too tight, and brush the real things under the rug. I had come because it was expected. That's what being part of a toxic family feels like. You show up whether you want to or not. Because not showing up would just give them more ammunition. I wore the best dress I had. I brought a pie I spent all afternoon baking. I even practiced small talk in the car ride over, trying to convince myself that maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. Dad was already a few beers in when I got there. His laugh was booming across the kitchen like a wrecking ball, and when he saw me walk in, he just lifted his beer in a mock toast and said, "Look who finally made it." Nobody laughed. Nobody defended me. I smiled anyway and found a seat at the end of the long table, squeezed between a coat rack and a cousin who barely remembered my name. Dinner started off stiff but manageable. Chit-chat about the weather, sports, the neighbour's new boat. I kept my head down, nodded when spoken to, pushed food around my plate like I wasn't sinking inside, and then, somewhere between the green beans and the pumpkin pie, my dad leaned back in his chair, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and said loud enough for the whole table to hear, "You know, Em's always been the dead weight of this family, always dragging everyone else down, never doing anything that matters." The room froze. My fork clattered onto my plate. My heart thudded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Dead weight. The words hung there, heavy and ugly, slipping into every crack in my skin where old wounds still lived. I felt 16 again, standing in the driveway with a suitcase while he screamed, Shaheen, about how I was throwing my life away by not going to the college he picked. I felt 18 again, sitting in the bleachers alone at my high school graduation because he said he had better things to do. I felt 21 again, clutching a job offer letter in my hand, while he told me it wasn't real success unless it came with a six-figure paycheck. And now, here I was, 27 years old, still trying to earn a seat at a table I should have flipped over years ago. Nobody said a word. Not Mum, not my sister, not the uncle who used to sneak me extra cookies when Dad wasn't looking. They all just looked away. Like, maybe if they didn't meet my eyes, they wouldn't have to feel it. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my napkin in his face and tell him all the things I had held back for years. But I didn't do any of those things. I just smiled, a small, tired smile. And I said, "That's funny. I guess dead weight's about to own a whole lot more than you think." Nobody understood what I meant. Not yet. But I knew something they didn't. I had spent the last year working quietly with Grandpa's lawyer, Mr. Halston, a gruff old man who still believed in handshakes and promises kept. Grandpa had rewritten his will before he passed. He left the family property, the land Dad had been bragging about for years, not to Dad, not to my sister, to me. Because Grandpa had seen something in me that Dad never did. Strength. Persistence. The kind of quiet fight that survives long after the loud ones burn out. Mr. Halston was supposed to meet me tonight. He was supposed to hand me the papers. He was running late, caught up in some traffic, but he was coming. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the storm that was about to break, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of it. I sat there in that suffocating dining room, watching everyone scrape their forks across their plates, pretending nothing had just happened. The ceiling fan hummed. The clock ticked loud in the silence. The smell of gravy and cold pie crust clung to the air like regret. And then, just as Mum started stacking empty plates and muttering about coffee, there was a knock at the door. 3 soft raps, measured, calm. I knew, before I even turned my head, who it was. Dad grumbled, pushing up from the table like he owned the whole world. "I'll get it." he said, puffing out his chest like he was about to receive some kind of award. He yanked open the door, and there stood Mr. Halston. Dark coat, leather briefcase, silver hair neatly combed back. He looked like the kind of man who never once in his life backed down from a fight. And tonight, he didn't even blink at the way Dad towered over him. "Good evening, Mr. Taylor," Mr. Halston said smoothly, using Dad's last name like it was a legal formality, which, technically, it was. "I'm here to deliver documents to Miss Emily Taylor. I believe she's expecting me." Dad looked back at me, confusion flickering across his face. Then he laughed a low, ugly sound and said, "She doesn't need a lawyer. She needs a job." He thought he was being clever. He thought he still had the upper hand, but Mr. Halston just stepped inside, brushed past him without even breaking stride, and made his way toward me. The whole room was staring now, forks frozen halfway to mouths, coffee cups trembling slightly in hands. No one was pretending anymore. Mr. Halston opened his briefcase with a click and pulled out a thick folder, sliding it across the table toward me. "These are the finalized documents for the transfer of ownership," he said, effective immediately. "Emily Taylor is now the sole owner of the Taylor family property, including the house, the land, and all attached rights." Silence, heavy, total. I heard my sister gasp. I saw Mum's hand fly to her mouth. And for the first time in my life, I saw Dad's face lose all that smug, solid colour like someone had yanked the rug out from under him, and he hadn't even realised it was possible. "What the hell is this?" he barked, voice rising, face redder by the second. Mr. Halston remained unbothered. "It's all there in black and white, signed, notarized, and fully binding." Dad turned on me then, pointing a shaking finger like I had personally set fire to his world. "You scheming little brat!" he snarled. "You went behind my back. You stole what's mine." I stood up slowly, the chair legs scraping against the worn hardwood floor. My hands weren't shaking, my knees weren't weak. My voice, when it came, was steady and clear. "You're wrong," I said quietly. "I didn't steal anything. Grandpa gave it to me because he knew I wouldn't waste it, because he knew I wouldn't throw it away trying to impress people who didn't care." Dad opened his mouth to spit something else at me, but Mr. Halston held up one hand like a referee ending a match. "You'll find that contesting the will would be a waste of time and money, Mr. Taylor," he said calmly. "Your father's intentions were very clear. The court will not overturn them." Dad looked like he might explode, but there was nothing he could do. Not this time. He couldn't yell it away. He couldn't bully it into submission. He couldn't erase it with one of his classic guilt trips. The deed was done, literally. I picked up the folder, tucked it under my arm, and looked around the room, at my mother, who looked like she might cry but wasn't sure for whom, at my sister, who looked a little green, like she'd just realised the golden child routine might not pay off forever, at my uncles and cousins, all fidgeting, trying to pretend they hadn't spent years laughing at me behind my back. And finally, I looked at Dad. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. I just met his eyes and held them for one long, steady moment. Then I turned and walked out the door, the folder heavy in my hands and my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. Behind me, I heard the rising buzz of angry voices, but I didn't look back. I had nothing left to prove and everything ahead of me to claim. The night air hit me like a wave the second I stepped off the porch. It was cold, sharp enough to bite through my sweater, but I barely felt it. My whole body was buzzing, every nerve lit up with something I couldn't quite name. Freedom, maybe, or fear, or just the shock of finally standing up and realising the world didn't end when I did. I walked to my car, the gravel crunching under my boots, the folder pressed tight against my chest like a shield. I could still hear voices rising inside the house, sharp and furious. But they felt far away, like a storm rolling over a town I didn't live in anymore. I sat in the driver's seat, with my hands on the steering wheel for a long time, staring out at the dark street, the empty yards, the flickering porch lights. This should have felt like victory, like finally winning a battle I'd been fighting my whole life. But it didn't, not yet. It felt hollow, because the truth is, when you spend your whole life trying to earn love from people who only know how to withhold it, even walking away feels like failure at first. I had stood up for myself. I had taken back what was rightfully mine. I had broken the cycle, but it still hurt. It still cracked something deep inside me that had been holding on, even after everything, hoping that maybe, somehow, this would be the moment they saw me, chose me, loved me without conditions. It wasn't, and now I had to find a way to live with that. I drove back to my apartment. The street's empty except for a few stray cats and the occasional blinking stoplight. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't need anything to drown out the quiet. When I got home, I dropped the folder on the kitchen table and stood there staring at it. My name, my deed, my future, all right there in black and white. I thought about calling someone, a friend, anybody. But what could I say? How do you explain to someone who grew up with warm hugs and homemade birthday cakes what it feels like to win a war you never wanted to fight in the first place? Instead, I made myself a cup of tea. I wrapped up in my heaviest blanket. I sat on the couch and let the silence wrap around me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't run from it. I let myself feel it all. The anger, the grief, the deep, aching sadness for the little girl who had spent so many years believing if she just tried harder, loved bigger, stayed quieter, she could fix it. You can't fix people who don't think they're broken. You can't heal in a house built on blame, and you can't spend your whole life trying to fill the empty places in someone else's heart. That night, sitting alone in my tiny living room, I realised something that should have been obvious all along. I wasn't dead weight. I wasn't a disappointment. I wasn't broken. I was just me, flawed, messy, still learning, but enough without their approval, enough without their applause, enough without their love. It wasn't the kind of realization that comes with fireworks or sweeping music. It was quieter than that, a steady, slow unfolding, a breath I hadn't even realized I'd been holding finally let go. By the time the sun started to rise, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let that house sit there like a wound I had to reopen every time I looked at it. I wasn't going to let the past own one more piece of my future. I was going to rebuild. Not for them, for me. The first thing I did was walk through the house and touch everything. It sounds small, but for me, it was the first step in turning this place from just a house into something that belonged to me. The walls, the floors, the chipped cabinets, they were all waiting for me to claim them. I started in the living room. The old furniture was still there, faded couches, mismatched chairs. They looked like something out of a catalogue for people who had given up. I pulled the curtains open and let in the light, watching as the dust floated in the air. The place had been empty for too long, and I could feel it. The emptiness wasn't just physical, it was emotional. I wanted to fill it with warmth, laughter, peace, things that had never really been a part of this house before. I found myself smiling as I started making a list in my head furniture to buy, paint to pick, light fixtures to change. It wasn't a to-do list, though it was a blueprint for my new life. By the time the weekend rolled around, I'd set up a few appointments with contractors. I wasn't going to try to fix everything myself. I knew I needed help to make this place something I could live in comfortably, and I needed it to feel like home. Not like a battlefront. The process was slow, but it was mine. Every decision I made was a choice to start fresh. A week later, I had my first day off in a while, and I decided to spend it at the house, just living there for the first time. There was no furniture yet, and the place still smelled like old wood and paint fumes, but I loved it, every inch of it. I made a cup of coffee and sat on the floor, staring out the window at the quiet street. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. It didn't matter that I hadn't decorated every room. It didn't matter that there were boxes still stacked in the corner, waiting to be unpacked. What mattered was that I was finally here, fully here, with a space that was truly mine, and I was ready to move forward. It was a Saturday evening when I got the call. Mum. I knew it was her before I even picked up the phone. It was the kind of call I used to take, just to keep the peace. To hear her tell me that I was still disappointing her, still not living up to whatever she had in her head for me. To hear her tear me down just a little bit more. But this time, when I answered, I didn't hear the usual coldness. I didn't hear the anger or the judgment. Instead, I heard a shaky voice. I need to talk to you, she said, barely above a whisper. I took a breath. I wasn't ready for this, but I needed to be. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak, even though every part of me wanted to hang up and ignore her, like I had done so many times before. She apologized, quietly at first. Then, with more emotion, as she admitted she didn't know how to fix things between us. She admitted that maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong. That maybe, just maybe, she had pushed me away too much. It was the hardest thing to hear, and the easiest, because it wasn't an apology I had been waiting for. It wasn't the kind of apology I thought would make everything okay, but it was a step, and that was all I needed to hear. Thank you, I said softly, but I don't know if I can just pick up where we left off. It's going to take time. She didn't argue with me. She just let out a long breath and said, I understand, but I'm here. Whenever you're ready. I didn't know if I would ever be ready, but in that moment, I knew I didn't have to make a decision right away. For the first time, I felt like I had a choice. I wasn't bound by guilt, by fear, by the need to fix everything for everyone else. I had the space to heal at my own pace. The next few weeks passed quickly. The house slowly transformed. New furniture arrived. Paint was splashed on the walls. And the rooms began to look more like me and less like the remnants of a past I didn't need to carry anymore. But it wasn't just the house that was changing. I was changing. I found myself setting boundaries I had never set before. I started calling the shots in my life, not letting anyone else tell me how to live, how to feel, or who to be. My mornings were spent sipping coffee on the porch, watching the neighborhood wake up. My evenings were filled with soft music and laughter from the people I invited in, real friends who wanted to share my space, not take it over. I was living the life I had always wanted, one quiet, steady day at a time, and for the first time, I felt the weight of the past finally start to lift off my shoulders. Slowly, but surely, I was becoming the person I had always dreamed of being. A person who was strong enough to stand on her own, to build something real, to create a future filled with freedom and hope. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. The morning light had a way of creeping in through the cracks of the curtains, soft and pale, as if the world was just waking up along with me. It was a few months after I'd finally settled into the house, and the work was far from over. But something had changed in me, something deeper than just the walls being painted or the furniture being moved in. I wasn't looking for approval anymore, not from my dad, not from my mum, not from anyone. I had already won, and the prize was more than just the house. It was the peace I felt when I woke up in the morning, knowing I could live my life without apology. It was a strange feeling. I had spent so much of my life fighting for space at a table that was never meant for me. Fighting for a love that was conditional, fighting for validation from people who didn't even understand what it meant to truly love someone. But now, for the first time, I wasn't fighting. I wasn't chasing. I wasn't asking for anything. I was just living, and I wasn't alone in it either. The friends who had stuck by me, the ones who never questioned my choices or held my past over my head, were the ones who filled my life with laughter and joy. They didn't care about the history of this house or my family drama. They cared about me, who I was in that moment. And that was more than enough. One afternoon, I sat on the porch with Mia, my best friend from college. She was sipping iced tea, her feet kicked up on the railing, and we were chatting about life. As we often did, she knew bits and pieces of my story, but not all of it, especially the dark, ugly parts that I had tucked away for years. "How's the house coming along?" she asked, glancing around. "I swear, every time I come here, it looks better and better. You're really turning this place into something special." I smiled, feeling the warmth of her words settle into my chest. "It's getting there, but it's not just the house. You know, it's the life I'm building here. It's like I'm starting over." Mia raised an eyebrow, taking a slow sip. "And how does it feel?" "Feels like freedom," I said, my voice steady. "Like I finally have the chance to be the person I was always meant to be, without carrying all that weight." Mia looked at me, her expression softening. "I'm proud of you. You've been through so much, and it's amazing to see how far you've come." I could feel the sting of tears at the back of my throat, but I swallowed them down. I didn't need to cry anymore. The tears had already been shed. The pain had already been felt. What I had now was peace. Later that week, I ran into my mum at the grocery store. I had been dreading this moment for months, knowing that eventually I would have to face her again. I hadn't seen her since the night I walked out of the family dinner, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Would she apologize? Would she ask for forgiveness? I had no idea. We stood there in the produce aisle, both of us staring at the same pile of tomatoes, neither one of us speaking. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Emily," she began, her voice small. I want to talk, if you're willing." I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch between us, the weight of everything we had never said hanging heavy in the air. But I knew that this moment wasn't about making things right. It was about me standing in my truth. "Go ahead," I said quietly, looking at the tomatoes again, avoiding her eyes. She took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. "I know I've hurt you. I've said things I shouldn't have said, and I've done things I regret. I never meant to make you feel like you were nothing." I didn't look up at her, but I could hear the sincerity in her voice. For the first time in a long time, I heard her really see me, and I realized something important. I didn't need her apology to move forward. I didn't need her validation to heal. "I appreciate that," I said, finally meeting her gaze. "But I don't need you to apologize. I've already moved on. I've learnt how to love myself, and that's enough for me now." She blinked, as if surprised by my response. But there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. "Okay," she whispered, nodding slowly. "I understand." And with that, we said goodbye, not with a hug, not with a promise, but with a mutual understanding that we were both moving forward, in our own way, on our own terms. As I walked out of the store, I realized something that made my chest tighten with bittersweet relief. I didn't need anything from her anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. I had built a life for myself that was full of everything I had always wanted: peace, strength, and the courage to stand on my own. I was free, truly free. Emily's story is a powerful reminder that healing starts the moment we stop seeking validation from those who have hurt us. It's easy to get lost in the toxic dynamics of family, to keep trying to earn love and approval. But Emily shows us that true strength comes from choosing ourselves. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't walking away from the ones who hurt you. It's accepting that their love is not something you have to fight for anymore. Through Emily's journey, we see the power of reclaiming your own life, of standing up for yourself even when it feels like the world is against you. The real victory isn't in changing others, it's in changing how we view ourselves and our worth. If Emily's story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you experienced similar struggles? What helped you heal and find your strength? Please leave a comment below. Share your own journey. Or just let us know how you found peace in your life. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of healing, strength, and personal triumph. Your story matters, and together, we can all keep moving forward.